Hey Musties, I'm looking at what might just be the worst Godzilla book ever made. I saw this on sale online for $9. I even saw it, actually I got it for even cheaper. I still plan on returning it regardless. This seems like it's like one of these AI written books. I could be wrong, but it seems like they kind of just stole the license to Godzilla and some other images, which we'll get to in a little bit. But when I saw this, I was hoping it would be like a cheaper version. It's normally like $9. I got mine for even cheaper. I think I got mine for like $6. I'm going to return it regardless just because I was hoping that this would be a cheaper, maybe smaller version of that long out of print 1990s Godzilla Compendium book. It's supposed to be all about the Godzilla movie timeline, not the chronological order of the release dates, but how the movies were released in terms of story-wise. So let's just take a look at this here. First, what do you think is on the back of this box? Not box, book. Well, if you guessed a random T-Rex, you'd be right. I bet that is also some stolen art from online. Let's just pop it open and take a look here. I'm not going to read everything in here, but go ahead. Since this is already like copyright infringement, I don't care about just sharing this book because there's no way this book's copyrighted. So the Godzilla movie timeline starts out here with a little bit of a story here. It says that the author is somebody called Movie Buffs. That's not even a real person. I don't think it's even a real organization because it doesn't say where you can contact them at or anything. But basically a brief overview here says that Godzilla's been in a lot of comics, novels, TV series, movies. It even specifies right here that Godzilla's been in 33 Japanese movies and a total of 37 films. And so, but if you look and count all the Japanese stuff in here, there's only 32. So they knew about Godzilla -1 when they were making this. Maybe they didn't know the title yet or anything, but they didn't even leave a section saying, hey, there's an upcoming Japanese Godzilla film. And then it says that Godzilla is recognized as the longest running ongoing movie series. But it starts right over here with Godzilla 1954. And this is all you get for Godzilla 1954. At no point does it elaborate on like the Raymond Burr version, or it doesn't even say the Japanese title Gojira. It just says what you can see here. And if you think that this is cheap, this is one of the most elaborated stories or writings that you'll see about any of the films in here. But yeah, so we start off with Godzilla. Doesn't show anything about the runtime, no alternate titles, doesn't say who stars in the movie, doesn't say anything about its legacy other than the fact that this is the movie that started it all. Then we turn over here, and we got some, this is still more than what most of the movies get here. But we got here that the dates are all correct, 1955, 1962. There's some random internet art that just says Monster Invasion. I think the only thing that could possibly be worse than this is some like cheaply made like how to draw Godzilla books or something like that, where it says like draw a circle, draw a stick figure, then draw Godzilla around it. I had one for Sonic the Hedgehog like that. Very disappointing. These books aren't even worth anything if they're free. It just takes up space. And honestly, this like story right here is what I would pretty much say to my mom if I wanted to annoy her. Look at this T-Rex here for Mothur versus Godzilla. You could at least put a picture of a real-life moth. That would be more accurate. Mothur vs. Godzilla is the 4th Godzilla movie, and in that movie, Godzilla fights a giant moth, and Godzilla actually loses. Spoiler alert. And that would be more than what this says. And for some reason, starting with this movie here, they start calling the kaiju Kaij. I don't know if I thought it was a typo at first, but no. Every time they say kaiju, starting from this page onward, it just says Kaij. Then we got Ghidorah, a 3-headed monster. Then we got another random T-Rex silhouette there. It says Invasion of the Astro Monster. Godzilla goes to space. They don't even mention Rodan being in this movie, which you would think that would be kind of like important for a Godzilla fan to know, who doesn't know anything about these movies. Then we have Ibra, Horror of the Deep, which at least this time it says Ibra is a massive lobster, which is more accurate than what that's more descriptive than what they did for the Mothra vs. Godzilla movie. And then we have Son of Godzilla, which shows Godzilla in a river outside of a city, which isn't even close to what happens in the movie. And that honestly looks like more like the legendary Godzilla artwork, kind of. They don't even mention that Godzilla and his son fight a giant spider or praying mantis. Then we skip over here to Godzilla vs. Hedorah. You might think this is out of order, but just remember, this is the chronological order from the timeline perspective, not how the movies were released, but from the story perspective. And since Destroy All Monster takes place in the future, that's why they left it out for right now. But doing a book this way, with the correct timelines, isn't really worth being a book. And here's a pretty cool T-Rex sketch. But, I mean, once again, it's probably just stolen art. It has nothing to do with Godzilla vs. Gigan. But, like, if you were actually to do a descriptive story book about each individual movie, then you could have a bonus section where you just list the movies in order and why they're a certain order that way, not the way that they were released. That would be more of a reason to write anything like this, but not as a standalone book. And this gets really annoying after a while because all the words are spaced out here. With the addition of the robot jet Jaguar, this picture pits Godzilla against Megalon and Gigan, culminating in a tag team battle. Yeah, that's annoying. And we go on to Godzilla vs. Mecca Godzilla with literal Jurassic Park ripoff artwork here. No mention of King Caesar. And then we have here Terror of Mechagodzilla, where it says Titanosaurus is an aquatic kaiju. And then we go back to Destroy All Monsters, because that takes place in the year 1999, which was the future compared to these other movies at the time of its release. And then we have All Monsters Attack, aka Godzilla's Revenge. Once again, they could just put at least a subtitle in there. They don't mention the introduction of Gabara. This is his own timeline because it's not actually in continuity to anything. Godzilla's not even real in this movie, so that's correct. Then we get into the Heisei era here, roughly. I know technically the Return of Godzilla, I think, was still during the Showa era, but it doesn't specify this is the beginning of a new timeline here. Same thing with this. I mean, it kind of says departing from it takes place in the imagination of the mind of a young boy. So yes, this is correct in terms of the Godzilla timelines to be its own separate timeline, but they don't really even signify that, hey, it says Godzilla Returns. Okay. What does this mean? Does this mean that it's its own continuity? Does it mean that it's connected to any of these other things? I mean, we know it's connected to the original 1954 Godzilla film, but it doesn't specify to the reader that, hey, this is, like, there's no different graphics to determine, hey, this is timeline number 2 or 3 or whatever, you know? And we have here Godzilla vs. Biollante. Well, you can't forget this crappy artwork here. I mean, it's not necessarily crappy, it's just stolen. It's lazy on the part of the book to do this here. Godzilla vs. Biollante, it says, this movie merges science fiction and horror. Doesn't almost every Godzilla movie do that? Here's some literal AI artwork here. As you can see, this monster has a random leg growing out the side of it here. And its mouth, can you focus, please? And its mouth is just like curling inwards up here. It says that there's time travel and that it changes history, but it doesn't say anything more about the plot. Godzilla vs. Mothra, aka the Battle for Earth. Doesn't say anything about Batra. It just says about reflecting ecological worries in the early 1990s, as if that's the only time there's ever been ecological worries. Especially in a Godzilla movie. Here's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. This time they finally remember to mention that Rodan is a part of this. But then they have a random video game Dark Souls looking character here. He's got even 2 swords in his hands. That looks like AI art also. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I mean, I'm flying through this kind of, but there's nothing to really talk about here. Like, the back of the movie box or DVD or whatever has better descriptions than this. And then look at this. The last sentence here to cram it all in there is all one long word. A poignant story about endings and new beginnings. That's all one word. It's a random dragon T-Rex art. Then here's the 1998 Godzilla. This Hollywood adaptation reimagines Godzilla as a creature unleashed by nuclear testing, unleashing havoc on New York City. Now, that is the correct order that was released, and then it jumps into next. I kind of want to give this movie credit for this book credit for knowing that this movie has a slight connection to the 1998 Godzilla movie. It doesn't even say anything about who starred in it or whatever, or the legacy or the infamous legacy of this movie. It doesn't say that this is like considered the worst Godzilla movie of all time, because it's not really even Godzilla. But this movie, the 2001 movie, Godzilla, Mothur, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Attack, they briefly make a joke about this movie. And so you can kind of actually pretend that they are connected together. But it's not officially like canon in that sense. It's just a nice little Easter egg there. But yeah, and here's some random art. Looks like probably more AI art, but so I want to give the book credit for doing that, but making it strongly connected to the 1998 movie is kind of misleading. And then we go back into this timeline here for the Godzilla Millennium. This actually specifies, well, nothing. It just says this picture, a return to Japan, ushers in a new era of Godzilla films. Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. It says that, except for the original, this is a reboot in timeline. Once again, I should be doing counts up here of the different timelines. Or maybe like some arrows just mapping out, like once again, to remind people so they don't have to keep flipping through the books to see what order things were. Just saying, hey, this timeline has 2 movies. And then go to their own pages for their own descriptions. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. This film is a straight sequel to the original, ignoring it. Yep. So it gets the timeline stuff pretty correctly here. Godzilla Tokyo SOS. This is some random AI dragon art. Godzilla Final Wars. They at least specify here that it tries to string all the movies together. It should say that it's kind of its own continuity at this point. You can tie it in with the first one probably still originally. But that's about it. They don't ask. But it says that the final battle takes place in Antarctica. No, Antarctica is like in the middle of the movie. Ugh. And then we have Shin Godzilla, which is its own timeline here. Makes a brief reference to Neon Genesis. And then we jump into this anime trilogy timeline here. It's its own thing. Some random art. This almost looks like the Ray Harryhausen giant monster film. We have this. And now it mentions these anime trilogy films. And then we get into the Monsterverse. And it mentions the live action TV show for the Monsterverse. But it doesn't mention Godzilla Singularity Point. So we have a TV show, we have anime, but we don't have an anime TV show listed in here. Let alone that 1998 Godzilla TV series, which would be its own part of its own timeline with the 1998 film. This is once again terrible reading here. How 2 words here, 1 word over here, 1 word over here, 2 words over here. Anyways, we get over here, we get a brief summary of the Monarch Legacy of Monsters, so they should at least have something about the -1, but they don't. Godzilla King of the Monsters, 2019, Godzilla vs. Kong, and then that's it. There's, like, it just randomly ends on this picture of Godzilla screaming here. No contact info, it's just its own thing, and then we're back to the T-Rex here. Terrible. It even knows that it mentions earlier that there's a new Godzilla vs. Kong coming up, but it doesn't leave a space to discuss that or anything. It says that this is the conclusion of the 2021 film. It's so wrong. Don't buy it. Thanks for watching.